Somewhere in the Pacific, in the middle of a battle that never fully appears on a map, a radio crackles to life. The signal is weak, the background noisy, and yet the voice on the other end speaks quickly, confidently, without hesitation. Anyone listening can hear the words clearly, but no one, except a few people on the other side, understands what they mean. The message is not encrypted by a machine. There are no rotating wheels, no numbers, no symbols. It is simply spoken, and still, it is completely secure. During World War II, the United States faced a problem that technology alone could not solve. Radios made communication faster than ever before, but they also made interception unavoidable. Every order sent across the air could be heard by the enemy, recorded, analyzed, and eventually understood. Every message was a risk. What followed was not a story of invention in a laboratory, but of memory, culture, and a language the modern world had nearly ignored. This is the story of the Navajo Code Talkers, and of how words themselves became one of America's most reliable weapons. By the early 1940s, military communication was caught in a contradiction. Speed was essential, but security required time. Encoding messages protected information, yet decoding them slowed everything down, and in fast-moving battles, delays of even a few minutes could change outcomes. In the Pacific Theater, where distances were vast and conditions unpredictable, this problem became especially dangerous. Amphibious landings, shifting front lines, and constant movement demanded rapid coordination. Commanders needed clarity, not complexity. American codes, however, had a history of failure. During World War I, several had been broken, sometimes with alarming ease. By World War II, codebreakers were better trained, machines more advanced, and radio interception routine. The U.S. military understood that traditional encryption would not be enough. What it lacked was an alternative. That alternative did not come from a military academy or a research division. It came from a man who remembered his childhood. Philip Johnston was not an officer or a cryptographer. He had grown up on a Navajo reservation in the American Southwest, where his parents worked as missionaries. As a child, he learned the Navajo language, not academically, but naturally, by listening, speaking, and living among its speakers. Years later, we followed news of the war. Johnston noticed something others missed. The military was searching for faster codes, stronger machines, better systems. No one was asking whether language itself could be the solution. Navajo was not written. It was complex, tonal, and deeply contextual. Few people outside the Navajo Nation understood it, and even fewer could speak it fluently. It had no standardized grammar books, no dictionaries that outsiders could easily use. Johnston remembered how difficult it had been for non-Navajo speakers to learn even basic phrases. So he proposed something radical. What if the language was the code? When Johnston presented his idea to the U.S. Marine Corps in 1942, the reaction was cautious. The military trusted machines, not spoken words. A language seemed unreliable, vulnerable, even primitive by modern standards. Still, they agreed to a test. 2 Navajo speakers transmitted a message. Another received it and translated it back. The process was fast, accurate, and smooth. No decoding equipment was needed. No delays occurred. The Marines realized they were looking at something unprecedented. The initial program began with 29 Navajo men. They were recruited quietly, trained quickly, and sworn to secrecy. Many came from rural areas. Some had never traveled far from home, and several had grown up in schools where speaking Navajo had been discouraged or punished. Now, the same language was considered vital. Training focused on 2 things. First, they were Marines. Physical conditioning, discipline, weapons training, and unit cohesion came first. Only then did they begin developing what would become known as the Navajo Code. This was not simply Navajo used as is. It was a structured system built within the language. Military terms that did not exist in Navajo were assigned symbolic equivalents. Aircraft became birds. Battleships became whales. Tanks were turtles. Even spelling was encoded. Specific Navajo words represented individual letters, allowing names and locations to be transmitted without direct translation. Nothing was written down. Every code talker memorized the entire system. If captured, there would be no documents to find, no devices to seize, no code books to steal. The code lived entirely in the minds of the men who used it. When the Navajo Code Talkers were deployed to the Pacific, their role became immediately clear. They were assigned to infantry units, command posts, and communication teams, often operating close to active combat zones. Messages came constantly, requests for support, movement updates, changes in plans, all needing to be transmitted quickly and without error. The Code Talkers spoke into radios with speed and precision, translating English into Navajo, sending it across open frequencies, and having it translated back on the other end in seconds. Commanders noticed the difference almost immediately. Messages that once took 30 minutes to encode and decode now took less than one. Errors decreased. Coordination improved. At Iwo Jima, during some of the most complex operations of Pacific War, Navajo Code Talkers transmitted hundreds of messages in the opening days alone. Not a single confirmed message was compromised. Enemy forces intercepted the transmissions, recorded them, and analyzed them extensively. They could not make sense of what they heard. To them, it sounded like meaningless speech, disconnected and impossible to interpret. To American forces, it was one of the clearest communication systems they had ever used. Despite their importance, the Code Talkers lived in a strange position within the military. Their work was essential, but largely invisible. Their code was classified, their role rarely explained, even to fellow Marines. Some faced suspicion. Others faced misunderstanding. A few were even mistaken for enemy personnel because of their appearance and language. To prevent accidents, some Code Talkers were assigned bodyguards, not to protect others from them, but to protect them from their own side. It was an irony that many carried quietly. They did their jobs without complaint, sharing humor among themselves, leaning on shared culture, and trusting one another completely. They understood that if even one of them failed, the entire system could collapse. They did not speak of heroism. They spoke of responsibility. When World War II ended, the Navajo Code Talkers returned home, like millions of other veterans. But unlike most, they carried a secret they could not share. Their mission remained classified. They were instructed not to discuss it, not with friends, not with family, not even with other veterans. For more than 2 decades, they remained silent. Some worked in construction. Others became teachers, artists, farmers. When asked about the war, many gave simple answers and changed the subject. Only in 1968 was the Navajo Code officially declassified. Slowly, historians uncovered the truth. Interviews were recorded. Archives opened. The story emerged piece by piece. In 2001, the United States awarded Congressional Gold and Silver medals to the Code Talkers, finally acknowledging the role they had played decades earlier. For many, the recognition came late, but it came with meaning. The story of the Navajo Code Talkers is not about victory through force. It is about solving a problem through understanding, memory, and trust. At a time when technology failed, culture succeeded. When machines struggled, human knowledge endured. Their contribution reminds us that history often turns not on the loudest moments, but on the quietest ones, on decisions made without applause, by people who never expected recognition. So perhaps the question to carry forward is a simple one. What knowledge do we overlook today, because it does not look modern enough, or powerful enough, or familiar enough to matter? History suggests that the answer may shape the future more than we expect.